Night shift workers of Reddit, what was your creepy or scary moment you will always remember? I worked night shift at a gas station, so I saw a lot of weird shit, but I think the worst was a guy who stalked me. I went out to smoke during a calm period. He came up seemingly out of nowhere with a bag of trash and a knife, and started to explain how he was making flashbangs with a broken Swifter handle and sparklers he had. According to him, he was working with the CIA and the local PD to catch someone. I'm not entirely sure. He was rambling and pulled out a knife, so I didn't listen incredibly well for focusing on what he was doing with the knife. He followed me into the store, cut himself with the knife, and bled on everything, and followed me around until he gave me a glass globe from his trash bag and left. He came back randomly during my shifts for a few months bringing me stuff, and eventually tried to get in my car with me. So, for a while I pulled the late shift at an Italian restaurant when I lived in Canberra. The park across the road was notorious for stabbings and violent robberies. I had to walk through it to get back to my college. For a little while there was this guy that would play the sounds of crying babies or whimpering dogs to lure people deeper into the park, where he would attack and rob them. One time walking along the road that ran through the park at about 1 AM I heard a baby crying in the park. I noped out of there and booked it back to my college. 2 weeks later the dude was caught. His phone allegedly had dozens of different tracks of babies and dogs crying. Was locked in the shop for my first ever single man shift at a petrol station. I was on the floor stocking some stuff. I had the music off because I wanted to be able to hear everything and not imagine things over the radio. All of a sudden I heard a massive loud bang and my heart stopped. I couldn't work out what it could have been. It sounded vaguely like the newspaper stand door slamming, but there was no wind for it to be that. I looked up onto the forecourt and saw a car not parked on a pump or in a space, just waiting there. I ran out into the office to check all the CCTV cameras. I waited till the car finally left 5 minutes later, but it felt like a lot longer. Finally worked up the courage to go back to what I was doing. A bag of wine gums had fallen off the shelf where I had overstocked. Used to work at a late night arcade, and one night around 9:30 PM someone came in wearing a trench coat, which was creepy enough since it was middle of summer in Florida, so it was very hot and humid. They came up to the counter and pulled a rifle out from under the coat and set it on the counter. Of course instantly everyone starts freaking out, and me being the shift lead and highest ranking staff member had to deal with it. We had absolutely no policy for if someone wanted a gun stored while they're on the property, so I just took the rifle and put it in the back room where we kept the money and such. Heavy locked door, only I had the key. I texted all the managers and supervisors to tell them what was up. The dude never came back for it. When I went in the next morning it was still back there, so he never asked the next manager for it back. We kept it there for the next day and then called to police to come in and get it. Never heard anything back about it. But why would the person bring it to an arcade, leave it, and never come back for it? It was fully loaded too, had the safety on, and I believe there was a trigger lock on it. Definitely one of the creepier things that's happened to me at work. I worked night shift at a medical company. Being that we were slow with work often, my coworker and I asked to be cross-trained in the warehouse to count inventory. We were the only workers in this giant warehouse after 4 PM and no one else had access to it, other than security and custodians. One night we were closing up the warehouse around 1 AM and turned all the lights off. The switch was on the opposite end of the building from the main exit door. We were walking down the dark aisle to exit into some offices, and once we got to the door did not open. It's a sensor door, so it should have opened as soon as we touched it, but it didn't. We figured maybe security had overridden the lock and locked us in. At that moment we heard footsteps coming behind us and what sounded like something metal scrapping on the floor and hitting the racks like a metal pole being dragged. We panicked and the footsteps got louder and closer, and we frantically were pushing the door to get out, but it wouldn't open. In the reflection of the window, we saw a dark figure standing right behind us, and just then, the doors flew open on their own, and we ran out of there so fast. Turns out, security and custodial teams have all experienced creepy stuff at one time or another in the warehouse at night. so no one batted an eye when they told us that was normal. After that experience we just left the lights on and let security turn them off for us. Lots of creepy stuff happened in our 6 months of working there. I used to work in a nursing home as a teen to earn some extra cash. I started 8 p.m, helped get everyone settled in for the night, and at 11 p.m. went to bed myself. I was the on-call help for the person doing the awake shift. So if they needed an extra set of hands I'd be there, etc. One shift I was unwell. Turned out I had pneumonia with a raging fever, so the other staff members sent me to bed early. Why she didn't send me home I don't know. I woke in the night to find one of the residents sitting in the chair by my bed, sponging my head and singing to me. It was sweet, but I was very confused as to why she was there as she'd been bedbound for months. I got up in the morning, she was gone. I dressed and dragged myself down to the office to let them know I was going straight to the DRs and wouldn't be in the next night. I told them how this resident comforted me all night, to be met with horrified looks as she had passed away just after I'd gone to bed. Okay, yikes. I worked third shift at hotels for a while. One night I'm making the rounds and see something sticking out of the flatbed of a truck. I walk up to see a foot hanging out from under a blanket that very obviously has someone under it. The foot is blue. It's like 40 degrees. I'll never forget how scared I was as I reached out to touch the foot to check it out. As soon as I touched the ankle, a teenage kid sits straight up from under the blanket. Scared the shit out of me. I'm like, kid, what the hell are you doing? He just scroggily says, Dad is snoring too loud. And then he went back sleep. I'd have put him in a room, but we were full. But, yeah, I thought I was going to find a body. Worked as night audit at a small hotel that all the Mexican housekeepers believed was haunted because of the multiple suicides on property, things they felt or saw in rooms. One night around 2 a.m, while working on a back office computer, my desktop turned a full 45 degrees to the left. AC wasn't on too high, desktop wasn't loose on the base. There was no reason for it to happen. Freaked me the hell out. Got up and spent rest of the shift in the lobby. I've worked night shifts alone at hotels for years and I've encountered quite a few crazes. One night I walked out back and a guy popped up from behind a large AC unit a ways down the building and took off walking in the opposite direction. I followed him, telling him that he needed to leave the property. He cussed me out as he went and I told him I would call the cops if he didn't leave. He left but kept coming back on a bicycle. I warned him a few more times and he kept telling me to get screwed. I called the police. They tracked him down and then, a little later, escorted him back onto the property. Turns out he'd left some stuff back by that AC unit, including his machete. He'd just gotten out of jail that day. To be honest though, the times I've been most nearly piss myself scared is when I come around a building and run into a deer. They freak out. I freak out. I worked third at a gas station. Beer's ale stopped at 3 a.m, and that when I'd go stock the cooler. The door had bell that can be easily heard in the cooler. Our town's police came in for free coffee. I'm in the cooler, didn't hear any bell and the cooler door flew open. It was a cop with his gun, drawn and aimed at me. Scared me shirtless. I put my hands up and said I work here. Apparently he had been in THR store a few minutes and got suspicious when no one came out. I said if a cop damn near shot me, I'm not sticking around to see what happens if I get robbed. Quit 2 days later. Back when I was a bar manager, I had to stay in a dark bar alone for a bit after everyone else goes home to file nightly reports. Before I took the job I had heard that some weird things happened there after close, like the sounds of chairs moving and receipt paper printing. But I'm a non-believer and thought that's just people's minds getting the better of them. Well, my first night of staying late rolls around and everything is going fine when suddenly the music turns on. The music which I controlled from about 5 feet away from where I'm sitting, and I can clearly see that no one has turned on. And it's playing some weird folk music that definitely isn't on the top hits playlist that was playing when we closed. I ran out of the office to see if anyone was there and of course saw nothing. I wound up staying later than I should have because I was constantly looking over my shoulder. At a hotel I worked at, I was watching the security cameras once, and I saw these two guys carrying out a human body out of one of the back rooms and into a car. I told the police and showed them the footage. They called the local hospital, but no descriptions matched. To this day I like to think said body was some dude that got too drunk/high and his friends were carrying him out. But I'll never know for sure. In college I was a security guard for a southern WV coal mine. Two things I remember. One night, the miners had left at around 10 and left the bay doors open in the building I was stationed in. No living creatures, no sounds other than myself, until around 4 to 5 am. Suddenly something comes flying through the building full speed and smacks into the window next to me with a giant bong sound. It was a bird, who ended up laying stunned on the ground for a couple of seconds, standing up, and then flying back out. Have you ever seen a fat redneck do a backflip? Second thing I remember is all the creepy sounds that used to come out of the mine entrances as I patrolled at night. Awful lot of commotion down there for empty mine shafts. I was stocking shelves at a small town grocery store when I heard a few thumps from the front windows. I went to investigate and saw all the windows smeared with blood. I slowly went to the locked sliding glass doors to find the coworker lying on the cement covered in blood with a towel around his hand. Opened the doors to find out he was drunk and had punched through a window in his house over an argument, and a chunk of his wrist was missing. Got some more towels and used my shoelace to tie around his arm to slow the bleeding. I had no idea what I was doing. Apparently this was a good thing to do, because later that day the EMT returned to tell us that my coworker had lost a life-threatening amount of blood, but because he was a bigger guy, and the fact that I used a shoelace as a tourniquet probably saved his life. Every time I see him, he reminds me and thanks me. Awesome ending, but still scared the shit out of me in the middle of the night. I was fresh out of high school, 90-pound female, and working at Walmart in the sporting goods section, which also happened to cut keys. This crazy guy who came in every once in a while had me cut a key for him, stood really close to me, and was almost behind the counter with me once or twice. He later came back in and said that the key I cut for him broke off in his ignition and messed up the car, and it was my fault. The supervisor came over and he got super aggressive saying I needed to pay for it. They had him leave, and I thought that was the end. Towards the end of my night shift my supervisor came to me to tell me the guy had been waiting in the parking lot for me for hours saying he was going to beat the crap out of me. I had almost gone out to my car to grab something, but thought maybe I shouldn't go out that night alone. They had a police officer escort me out and distract the guy so he wouldn't see what car I was driving. Someone walked me to my car for a couple weeks too. Pretty embarrassing and still nerve-wracking. Had recently seen Hereditary in the cinema. That night at work I'm in a women's bathroom. Very spacious and the place is dead quiet. Finished cleaning up some filth. Turn around and there is basically a hag standing 10 feet away from me just smiling. My heart felt like it was in my throat and my blood had run cold. Then she silently motioned if she was allowed to use the toilet. So I let her and went back later to clean up the shit I'd made. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe for more.